Those of you that are watching by YouTube, our YouTube channel, and all the way, listen, those of you that are watching by Spirit Word also, we thank you. So keep writing and telling us about the good things God is doing in your neck of the woods. So we appreciate that. But listen, I'm not going to waste any time. I want to get the man up here, the man of God up here, because I believe you are in for a treat, okay? There's not very many preachers that make it on my phone, okay? Bishop Michael Pitts, T.D. Jakes, I got a few other teachers, but Pastor Shane Willard is one of them that if you look at my phone, okay, he's on there. And if I told him, you made my phone, so this is a pretty big thing, okay? So that tells you, listen to me, I always listen to people that are smarter than me. And so you're in for a treat, okay? And so I want you to get up on your feet and give Pastor Shane Willard, all the way from Charleston, South Carolina, a Whelm Tri-Cities welcome. This is his first time, but definitely not his last time. He's now my friend and your friend. Come on, one more time. Let's lift it up for this man of God.
Wow. Flip. That was amazing. You guys make me feel right at home here. It is so good to be here. First time in Pasco, Washington. First time I've ever driven that scary road from Portland to here. That was pretty good, right? That was pretty good. I did that today. And it's so good to be here with you. Now, this definitely won't be my last time. I had a good chat with Pastor earlier, and we've got some dates coming up, and we're gonna make a relationship of this. I like that. And so, and you guys are gonna be great. If you're the type likes following an actual Bible, Ezekiel chapter 18, I'm going to get there in a second. If not, we're going to put them up on slides here in a second. For those of you who don't know me, which would be most all of you, this is all I do for a living. I travel around and speak. I've had the incredible privilege of being mentored by a pastor who just happens to have his rabbi training as well. So all my stuff comes from that. But I also have a master's degree in clinical psychology. So I'm qualified to sort your head out. So careful what you say to me afterwards. I can see through all that stuff, all right? On your way out, in the foyer back there, there's a gigantic table set up with our resources. If you walk out there and look and you can't find it, seek medical help. It's taking up half the room out there. If you go, why would you carry all that around with you? The reason is because we make a lot of money from it, okay? And the reason we do that is because we live with a conviction that we're not simply called to go to heaven when we die. We're called to say yes to the infinite possibilities that Jesus has for us here, now, today, to bring heaven here. And so, the way our ministry works is we run everything off honorariums and love offerings, so salaries, plane tickets, things like that, administrative costs, that all comes from that. 100% of the profit we make from that table, we give to the poor and the afflicted. We have 3 orphanages in China that look after mentally handicapped kids, 2 in Hinyang, 1 in Changsha. We also have a rescue home in Cape Town that gets women out of sex trafficking. But we don't just do that. We get them off drugs, high school educated, and job trained so we can break the cycle of poverty in the Cape Town flats, right? So everything out there is available in 4 formats: CDs, DVDs, USBs, and direct downloads, okay? If you don't know what a USB is, just buy the CD, all right? Or you can ask a 9-year-old, what do I do with this? They'll show you. It'll be fine, all right? You come on out there and check that out. All right, Ezekiel chapter 18. Before we read this, let me just set up a couple contextual things, because you cannot read a document that's over 3,000 years old without a little bit of explanation. Okay, first of all, Ezekiel is using words that they don't mean then what they mean now in terms of imagery, okay? So he's going to use some words like death, die, life, light. And if we read that through a 2019 evangelical mindset, we might interpret that as hell, heaven, all right? And in Ezekiel's day, those ideas as we know it did not exist. It doesn't mean they're not true. It just means that idea would not have been possibly what was in his mind, because he meant something else. When an ancient prophet said life or light or increase, he was talking about a way of living now that leads to God's best way. And conversely, if he said death, darkness, decrease, he wasn't talking about hell afterlife. He was talking about a way of life here that leads to disrepair. And in Scripture, it's presented as a choice: life or death. Choose life. obviously metaphorical. No one literally chooses when they live or die. This is a metaphor, right? Light or dark. Choose to be in the light as he is in the light. Choose blessings over curses. These were presented as choices. And what's happening is and the thing I'm not so worried about this on a Wednesday night. If I was preaching this on a Sunday, I would be. But on a Wednesday, I'm not so worried about it. Like if you're sort of on the fence with Jesus or you're new, right? And I don't want you to read some of this would sound terrifying. Like he's going to say things like, the one who sins is the one that will die, okay? And if you think hell, it's easily then to extrapolate that to go, oh, if I make a mistake, I could be eternally tortured, okay? And that is not at all what's going on in this passage, all right? When an ancient prophet said death or darkness or decrease, he was talking about the way you're living now. Or light, life and increase, he's talking about the way we're living now. Now what's happening in this passage, there's this guy named Ezekiel, and he is trying to encourage Israelite slaves in a place called Babylon. So he's talking to these people who come from slavery and then were free and then we're now back in slavery again. And he's trying to encourage people who are under the oppressive thumb of the Babylonian Empire under the rule of a man named Nebuchadnezzar. And he's trying to encourage them. This is Ezekiel 18 with that as the context. Check this out. And the word of the Lord came to me saying, what do you people mean by quoting this proverb about the land of Israel? The parents eat sour grapes, and now the children's teeth are set on edge. As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, you will no longer quote this proverb in Israel. The father eats sour grapes, and now the children's teeth are set on edge. What do you even mean by that? My mom ate sour grapes, and now my teeth are set on edge. What are you even talking about? Now, this is such an odd thing for an ancient prophet to say. So let's dig into this a bit and hopefully find ourselves in it and then be encouraged by it. First, what does this proverb mean? The father eats sour grapes, and now the children's teeth are set on edge. One, what does that mean? And two, why is God so apparently ticked off about it? Why is that so dangerous to talk about like that? Now, to understand this, we have to understand a brief history of Israel, okay? So, here is the entire history of Israel in 90 seconds. Ready? You have to pay real close attention. Here we go. There was a guy named Abraham who had a son named Isaac, who had a son named Jacob, who had 12 sons, and 11 of those 12 sons sold one of their brothers into Egypt. Through a famine, they all ended up in Egypt, and the other son gave them a piece of land. And then they started having babies, and those babies had babies, and they had babies, and they had babies, and they had more babies, and then more babies had more babies, and more babies, and more babies, and babies had more babies, and babies had babies, and babies, and babies, and babies, until they overpopulated Egypt. And the king of Egypt, a guy named Pharaoh, did the only reasonable thing he thought he could do, which was to enslave that group of people. 430 years later, God sends a man named Moses who delivers these people from slavery into freedom by walking them through the Red Sea, and he gives them a piece of land, and he gives them a mandate to show the whole world what it would be like for God to be in charge of your nation. A God who liberates slaves and maintains justice and righteousness to the poor. This, in short, turned out terribly. By the third king, a guy named Solomon, the book of Kings says, and this is the account of the slave labor that Solomon forced to build the temple to the Lord. So, a guy who comes from a lineage of freed slaves is now forcing slaves to build the temple to honor the God who frees the slaves. And he failed to see the irony in that. This turns out terribly, and this group of people end up back in slavery in a place called Babylon. And who do they blame for their slavery? Solomon. So much so that they wiped his name out of the historical record for hundreds of years, simply referring to him as David's son. Because David's son failed, we are where we are. It's David's son's fault. David's son became the villain in the story, which is why all the prophets who were mandated by God to preach to the slaves in Babylon, they say this: take heart, for God will bring a new son of David who will maintain justice and righteousness to the poor. Right. Fast forward to Jesus. They called him lots of stuff. Jesus Christ, Jesus son of Joseph, Jesus son of God, Jesus son of man, Jesus our King, Jesus our Savior. But the poor and the afflicted reserve one title for him: Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. In other words, are you the ones that the prophet spoke about long ago who would maintain justice and righteousness to the poor? Are you the new son of David? Because if you are, that means you're here for the poor and the afflicted. And newsflash, I'm poor. That means you're here for me. Now, I thought that was pretty good. Yeah, all right. So rewind back to Babylon. This group of people are blaming David's son. They're blaming. And what does a group of slaves do to cope? Slave culture throughout the history of the world, one of the ways slave culture copes is they write songs. They write, some of the most moving things in American history are the African American spirituals that were written out of oppression, seeing a way that God would liberate them, right? And so, and thank God that happened, right? And so you find they write poems because pain and suffering cannot be explained in bullet points, right? You write songs and poems and plays and things like this that express this. And one of the things that they said, they made up a song, and that song became a proverb. And here's the way it sounded. My father ate sour grapes, and now my teeth are set on edge. They set their blaming of why they were the way they are on Solomon, so much so that they made up a saying about it. My father ate sour grapes, and it set my teeth on edge. And God is saying, I never want to hear you say that again. Now, if you tuned out of any of that, you're like, Shane, I'm not. All right, here you go. Come back now. Here's everything that's going on in this passage in one statement. Ready? The current generation was blaming why they are the way they are on the previous generation. Because we've never heard that before, have we? I am the way I am because my mom. I am the way I am because my dad. Listen, I've been a pastor for years. I've been traveling for years. I was a counselor for years. Your pastors have pastored for years. And here's what happens. Occasionally, we have to confront destructive behavior, right? And the number of times you confront somebody on their destructive behavior, and it sounds something like this. Ma'am, seriously, you're a critical, cantankerous, horrible person. I don't know how to tell you this, but your husband is secretly praying for a comet to come to earth to bring him sweet relief from you. You have got to cut it out, right? And she goes, I know, but if you knew what my mother was like, you would know why I am the way I am, right? Or you have to confront a guy and you're like, sir, seriously, this drunken, abusive baby, you're losing the respect of your children forever and ever and ever. You're causing a situation that's going to make them be in therapy into their 40s. You got to cut it out. And he says, I know. But if you just knew what my dad was like, you would know why I am the way I am. And here's the problem with that. I have a master's degree in clinical psychology. If I sit with you for an hour and you answer me honestly, I can see why you are the way you are. Heck, Ray Charles can see why you are the way you are. Yes, your mother was critical, cantankerous, and horrible. I get it. Your dad was a drunk, isolated, abusive, manipulative person. I get it. Here's the problem. You're 40. Right? Right? And at what point do you draw a line in the sand and say, hang on a minute, just because my father ate sour grapes doesn't mean I have to continue to do so. This is one of the most empowering things possible for someone to say to people like this. Oh, my dad was abusive and horrible, so I'll be abusive and horrible. My mom was critical, so I'll be critical. My parents were controlling, so I will be. My parents didn't have any financial sense, so I won't have any financial sense. My parents had no skills, so I'll live without skills. My father ate sour grapes, so it set my teeth on edge. Ezekiel's saying, I don't want to ever hear that ever again, because the most empowering place you can possibly be is to stop blaming someone else for why you are the way you are and stand on your own 2 feet. Right? You say, Shane, you understand, man, you understand. My family had issues. Really? Let me ask you a question. Did your family have a man and a woman trying to live together? Then there's going to be issues, right? Why? Because marriage is hard and complex and difficult and a blessing and a reward and difficult and hard. Marriage is so complex, the Bible can't even agree on what to say about it, right? Right? Solomon says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. Woo-hoo! Paul says, he who marries does not sin, but he's signed up for a life of pain. Right? What's the Bible say about marriage? Depends who you read. Solomon says, marriage, let's do it. A lot. Paul's like, please make it your last choice ever. Why? Because it's hard. Listen, even if you marry someone who's basically good-hearted and basically mentally healthy. Now, if you marry a psychopath, I don't know, right? But if you marry someone who's basically good-hearted and basically mentally healthy, it's still difficult because of preference. Men and women just prefer different things. And sometimes those things are the most basic things you can imagine, right? Like, I'll give you an example, like smells. It doesn't get more basic than that. Women like sweet-smelling things. Flowers, perfume, candles. You give a woman a bouquet of flowers, you give a woman a bouquet of flowers, first thing she's going to do is sniff it. You'll never see men doing that. You hand a man a bouquet of flowers, all he smells is $70. That don't even make no sense. Right? We understand that. Right? Candles. You go to a big enough mall, you can find two women in any big enough mall that has a candle store. Two women will be in a same shop for an hour sniffing wax, calling it fun. Right? You'll never see two men doing that. You imagine that? Imagine walking by a candle shop and two men are in there. Hey, Billy, check that out, man. That's that new white lilac scent, man. That is, woohoo. No way. No way. Why? Because men like stinky things. There's nothing funnier to a group of men than when something stinky happens. That's hilarious. We love to smell stinky stuff. Listen, even if you train a man, right? If you train a man that when he takes off his work clothes, right, to put him in the dirty clothes hamper. Now he will not do this if he knows you're watching, but if he's by himself and you like sneak a glimpse here, when he takes those clothes off and puts them in a dirty clothes hamper, I promise you this is going to happen. When he gets to the end and he takes his socks off, right, before he drops them in the hamper, 100%. Did you see the guy last week in China that died from his own foot fungus from sniffing his socks? Yeah. Men understand that. They're like, yeah, poor guy, but right? And those socks had better smell bad enough. They'd be like, yeah. I think I can get one more wear out of these. I can tell you right now, right? It's like we prove we work or something, right? And there's something else in a man that women don't understand. There's something in our DNA. If there's four of us playing football, right, and we're bloody and sweaty and nasty and gross, right, and we get done, and we got to get to a meeting or something, so we shower up, right, we take those bloody, sweaty, nasty clothes, and we put them in a plastic bag, and we tie it up, and we put it in the trunk of our car. 3 months later, we're looking for something in the trunk of our car, and we see that bag. Every man in this room knows what must happen. If there's a bag with something stinky in it, there is no way that we cannot sniff it. We have to. And so every man in this room will open that bag and sniff it. Woo, woo. And here's the thing about men. It's in our DNA. You'll never change this, right? If there's 3 friends standing around, they all owe me a courtesy sniff of my stinky thing. And so men will pass around stinky stuff and, oh yeah, Bill, that was a good one. Woo, that was a good one. But here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. Once they courtesy sniff my stinky thing, now I owe them a courtesy sniff of theirs, right? That's what happens. That's why if you're ever stuck in traffic and there's 4 guys in one car, right? And 3 of them have their head out the window and the 4th one's in the back seat laughing. He just cashed in on his courtesy sniff. That's what's happening, right? Now, women think that's gross, but men are, your family had issue? Of course they did. Okay, you say, Shane, you understand, man, you understand, my dad had issues. Really? Your dad had issues? Really? Everybody's dad has issues. Listen, my dad has issues. My dad's a good man. He is a good man. It is 11 o'clock where I came from yesterday. It's 11 o'clock. I can tell you my dad's in bed right now. But I can also tell you where my father was at 4:30 this morning. I can tell you where he was. He was praying for this meeting tonight. And I can tell you that. I didn't know. I didn't call him. But that's where he's been every morning since I was a kid. My dad is an early riser. When I was a kid, he got up at 6. When I was in junior high, 5:30. By high school, it was 5 o'clock. I went to college. It was 4:30. Now he gets up at 4:15 to start praying at 4:30. The other day, I was having a meal with him. He said, Shane, I'm thinking about getting up at 4. I was like, Dad, if you live 10 more years, you're going to have to eat breakfast the night before. I don't know what to tell you. This is getting ridiculous. My dad's a good man, but he had issues. Let me tell you one of them. My dad loved to scare us. And I don't mean a mild boo. I mean scare the stew out of 6-year-olds. Like, I've never been a morning person in my whole life. Never in my whole life. I've always had a difficulty in the morning, and I operate best at night. That's how I've always been. So what my mom would do, she'd come in the morning, and she'd shake me awake, and then she'd sit me up on the side of the bed. Now, I want to be clear about this. I'm 6, okay? She shakes me awake, sits me on the side of the bed, and I had this horrible habit. I'd sit on the side of the bed and fall back asleep. Right? Yes, you get it, right? Yes, right? So my dad decided to break me of this. And his idea, he would never told Mom this, she wouldn't have allowed it, was he hid under my bed. Now, yes, now I'm 6. I think the boogeyman lives under there anyway, right? My mom comes in, has no idea. My mom comes in, shakes me awake, sits me up on the side of the bed, and I'm just about to fall back asleep. And my dad reaches out and grabs my feet. Your dad had issues? One time my dad I had one of these closets that opened that way. My dad put himself in my closet before I got up in the form of a crucifix. So I'm like 8 and I'm stumbling over to pick my clothes, and I open the closet and there's my dad. Your dad had issues, right? My dad also liked to embarrass us. He thought it was hilarious. He thought it was really funny to embarrass us. One time, Dad was taking me to junior high camp. Drop us off at church, and then 100 teenagers go to camp. What could go wrong? Anyway, so Dad's pulling up, and Dad said, "Hey, buddy, hey, man, I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm going to pray every day that God touches your life in camp." I was like, "Thanks, Dad. Love you too, man. See you later." My dad said, "Hang on, where's my kiss?" Right? I was like, "Dad, not here. Seriously, like 100 of my friends are here." Dad goes, "I get it. Go ahead." So I get off. I hand the bags to the bus driver. I get on a bus, like a big old 57 passenger thing. I'm in the next to last row, and we're fixing to leave. And I look up, and to my horror, my father had got on the bus. It was the middle of summer. He pulled his shorts up to here, his socks up to here, and he got on the bus with a limp. And he grabbed the microphone to the bus and he said, "Excuse me, everybody, this bus isn't leaving until my Shaney Waney comes up here and gives me a kiss." The whole bus starts chanting, "Kiss him, kiss him." Your dad had issues? Of course your dad had issues. Everybody's dad has issues. The question is are we doomed to repeat the issues of the previous generation, or are we free by the Spirit of God for every generation to stand on their own 2 feet before God? That's the question. That's the question. Because here was the problem in Ezekiel's day. Here it was. Ready? They believed that it was possible for a person to still be being punished by God for the sins of their great-grandfather. Now, to us, that sounds ridiculous, but they believed that, and it was intimated that way in Deuteronomy, see? And so they thought, if my great-grandfather was an evil man, what I'm facing today actually might be God's punishment on me. And what hope do I have if it was the other guy's fault? And how disempowering is that your life is determined based on the sins of someone that's been dead for 70 years, right? This is bad. But that's what they believed. The second thing they believed, which was destructive, was that God was for certain people and not for others. Right? So if someone was really blessed, God must be for them. And if someone is going through disrepair, God must be against them. And so they believed that God could be against someone for the sins of their great-grandfather, and with no hope of them changing that, and that God was for people and not for others, right? Which leads me to this. Watch this. This is the next verse. This is Ezekiel 18, verse 4. Watch what he says. For everyone belongs to me. Everyone. In other words, any discussion about who belongs to God and who doesn't, what are you talking about? Are they in God's world? Yes. Are they breathing God's air? Yes. Are they held together by God's name? Yes. Everyone belongs to me. The parent as well as the child. Both belong to me. But the one who sins is the one who will die. In other words, I am not for people and not for other people. I am for everybody. But when someone chooses to go directly against what good sense and good wisdom and God's rules for living, when someone chooses on purpose to go against those things, how can they not enter into disrepair? How can they not do that? Which leads me to an observation about common sense. Sometimes common sense is helpful. We bathe once a day. Helpful. We wash our dishes after we use them. Helpful. We get drunk on the weekend. Not so helpful, right? Sometimes common sense is helpful. Sometimes common sense is destructive. We manipulate to get our way. That's not helpful. We yell and scream and make everybody's life. No, that's not. Sometimes common sense is helpful. And here's the problem with that. What we think is common sense is firmly entrenched in us by the age of 8. By the age of 8, what we think is normal is there. And the question isn't, why do we think it's normal? It's obvious. Ray Charles can see why. Your parents were that way. And let me be clear, that's not your fault. That's not your fault. What you think is normal is not your fault. It was entrenched in you by the age of 8. You did not choose your parents. You did not choose what kind of people they are. But that is not the question. The question is can I be empowered in my generation to make a different choice and change my family tree? Right? Now, this long explanation ensues in Ezekiel 18, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll summarize it. I'll do it well. Here's what he says. This was so revolutionary. There would have been people discussing whether or not this was heresy at the time. Okay? So he says, suppose a righteous man gives birth to a son who turns out to be wicked. And then that wicked man gives birth to a son that turns out to be righteous. So if you're following his logic, you have a righteous grandfather, a wicked son, and a righteous grandson. He goes, who pays for whose sin here? And who reaps whose reward? Does the wicked son inherit the righteousness of his righteous father? Surely not. Does the righteous grandson, does he get punished for the wickedness of his father? Surely not. And the conclusion he comes to is every generation stands on their own 2 feet before God, and the generation that chooses God's ways lives in life, and the generation that chooses outside God's ways lives in death. Now, once again, to us, that sounds obvious. But to a group of slaves in Babylon, that would have been revolutionary stuff. So much so that they would have been questioning him like, are you sure? Is that not unjust? Is that unbiblical? Because remember, they believed in something called generational curses. Ezekiel's going, wait a minute. Here's the cure for a generational curse. Choose differently. What are you doing? What are you doing? You can fight the devil your whole life, or you can choose differently. Empower your life by the Spirit of the risen God and change your life and your generation. What you are is not your parents' fault unless you're 9. Once you're an adult and have independence, it's time to choose. And brave people can look at their family tree and go, you know what? That needs to go on, and that needs to die with them. And you don't have to throw it all away. Nobody should throw it all away. Something was good there. But good people, brave people do that. Now watch, here's the conclusion he gives. He makes this sort of case, and then he reiterates it. Here's what he says. This is verse 17. Watch this. He withholds his hand from mistreating the poor. This is talking about a righteous man. And he takes no interest or profit from them. He keeps my laws and follows my decrees. He will not die for his father's sin. He will live because of how he's choosing to live. Now watch this. Keep going. But the father will die for his own sin, because he practiced extortion, robbed his brother, and did what was wrong amongst the people. That generation is dying because of their own choices. This generation is living because they're making better choices. This was revolutionary thought. This would have been filling these people with so much hope. Watch this. Yet you ask, why does the son not share the guilt of the father? Now, why would they have asked that? Because that's what they were taught their whole life. If you've been taught something your whole life, and somebody comes along with a different idea, even if that idea is better, you might push back a little. Right? Yet you ask, why does the son not share the guilt of the father? Since the son has done what is just and right and been careful to keep my decrees, he will live. The one who sins is the one that will die. The child will not share the guilt of the parent, nor will the parent share the guilt of the child. And I want to stop right there and let that settle in for about 15 seconds. You are not paying for the sins of your parents. And there should be no guilt and no shame for whatever they were. And if you're a parent, you raised your children the best you can, and you got 4 of them, and 3 of them are awesome, and 1 of them's a lunatic, that is not your fault. They're 27 years old, right? Can't be sitting around, oh, what did I do? Wait a minute, they're 27, right? The righteousness of the righteous man will be credited to him, and the wickedness of the wicked one will be charged against them. Watch this now. But if a wicked person turns away from the sins they've committed and keeps my decrees and does what is just and right, that person will live. In other words, if you're on the road to death, darkness, and decrease, you have one choice: turn around. No matter how far down the road to death, darkness, and decrease you get, you're one decision away from turning your life around and entering into life, light, and increase. One, turn around. Why keep going that way? That's death, that's darkness. That road goes off that cliff. It doesn't matter what you intend, it's going there. The intention of your heart never determines where you go. It's always the road you're on. If you're on 82 going north with full intention of getting to Oregon, Canada is going to surprise you, right? It just doesn't, like, the road is going there anyway, right? Watch this, next slide. None of the offenses he's committed will be remembered against him. Because of the righteous things they've done, they'll live. In other words, if you're going this way and you turn around, eventually people forget that and they start remembering what you're doing. Watch this. Do I take pleasure in the death of the wicked? Am I not pleased when they turn and live? In other words, I'm not against them. I'm not in heaven watching someone ruin their life and going, y'all got to see this. This is going to be unbelievable. No. I'm putting every sign up I can. Turn around. This road goes off the cliff. Turn around. Watch this. Keep going. But if a righteous person turns from his righteousness and commits sin and does the same detestable things a wicked person does, will they live? No, none of the righteous things that person has done will be remembered. In other words, if you're on the road to death, darkness, and decrease, your decision is to turn around. If you're on the road to life, light, and increase, the decision is to keep going. And this is what's so important. Decisions don't work like bank accounts. It's not like if you have 20 years of good decisions, that you get 20 years of bad ones before you get back to even. Like, it doesn't work that way, right? And it's a good thing and a bad thing. Like, whoever has the strongest marriage in the room, whoever that is, you're one really bad decision away from that thing getting rocky, right? It doesn't work that way, right? If you have the strongest business in the room, you're still one poorly thought out business decision from it being a problem. In other words, if you're on the road to life, death, darkness, and decrease, turn around. But if you're on the road to life, light, and increase, keep going every day. Make good decisions every single day, every day, right? Watch this next slide. Because they are guilty of him, because of the sins they've committed, they will die. Yet you say the way of the Lord is not just. See, this is going to surprise you. But because Ezekiel was sharing something that went against the way they were always taught, there were people who pushed back. And they said, oh, this isn't just. This is, a matter of fact, they ended up killing him. His grave is a tourist attraction today. And they did Mike as well. Jesus addresses it in Matthew 23. He says, you who stone prophets. In other words, anybody that comes along with an idea that's better about God than you thought because it wasn't the way you were taught your whole life, you kill them. You're fixing to kill me only to realize it's that, right? Yet you say the way of the Lord's not just. Hear, O Israel, is my way unjust? Is it not your ways that are unjust? Here was the Israelites' way. The Israelites' way was, it's possible for someone to still be paying for the sins of someone that's dead. That doesn't sound fair, right? Now watch what he says. If a righteous person turns from their righteousness and commits sin, they'll die. Because they've sinned, they'll die. Now once again, this is death. Right? This is a prophetic sort of death, not literal. But if a wicked person turns away from wickedness they've committed and does what is just and right, they'll live. Obviously, metaphors, you'd have people living and resurrecting and dying, right? So he says, what's unfair about this? A generation that chooses God's ways lives, and a generation that chooses outside of God's ways enters into death. But the generation that chooses God's ways is not going to continually pay for the sins of the generation that didn't. That doesn't make any sense. Right? Now watch this. Because they consider the offenses they've committed and turn away from them, they will live and not die. Yet the Israelites say the way of the Lord's not just. Is it really my ways that are unjust? Isn't it your ways? Keep going. Therefore, you Israelites, I will judge each of you according to your own ways. You've got to understand how liberating that would have been. To a group of people who were terrified that God would judge them based on their grandfather. To hear, oh, it's my choice. It's my own ways. This would have been unbelievable. Repent, that just means turn around. Turn away, there you go, from all your offenses, then sin will not be your downfall. Watch what happens. Rid yourself of all the offenses you've committed and get a new heart and a new spirit. I'm going to read that one more time. Rid yourself of the offenses and get a new heart and a new spirit. Why will you die, people of Israel? For I take no pleasure in the death of anyone, declares the Lord. Turn around and live. Now, you might be thinking, Shane, 2019, Pasco, Washington, bring this to us. Okay. All of us, like what can we take away from this tonight? A couple things. One, all of us are formed by our history and heritage. And I want to be clear about this. It's not your fault, nor is it your earning it. If you were raised awesome, you didn't deserve that. And if you were raised terribly, you didn't deserve that. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. But every generation to some degree has to choose to turn around to live. Something in our family systems need to go on because they're awesome. And some things in our family systems need to die with them, right? Like my father's prayer life needs to go forward, right? His work ethic, forward. His generosity needs to go forward. His basic kindness to people, it needs to go forward. His absolute love for scaring 6-year-olds needs to die with him, right? Right? Which leads me to this. In a room this size, it is statistically improbable that there's not at least one of you thinking this. Shane, I appreciate you. You're sort of funny. I honor that. But you told the worst stories you could tell about your dad, and they were hilarious. If I told what my dad did to me, it wouldn't be funny. And I don't think I'd be allowed to tell it. And one of my resistance things with church is every now and then, especially on Father's Day, people stand up on stages and they go, the Bible says you need to honor your father and mother. But if you knew what they did to me, you would know that that's impossible. Can you please help me? Okay. Give me 4 minutes, I think I can. Okay? First, I am so sorry for what happened. Whatever your story is, I'm so sorry. A 6-year-old should never have to deal with listening to that yelling and abuse and watching things happen or having things. A 6-year-old should never, their biggest concern should be, where do I play? Not what you dealt with. And I am so sorry that that happened to you. That's first. Second, you don't honor somebody because they're honorable. You honor someone because you're honorable. That's second. Third, I think we need a better definition of honor. In Hebrew culture, honor has almost nothing to do with what you say to someone, and almost everything to do with how you behave away from them. You know this to be true intuitively. If you're a parent and your 16-year-old daughter says, "Dad, I honor you," would that bless your heart? Yes, and it should, right? But what's more honoring? Your 16-year-old daughter says, "Dad, I honor you," to your face? Or what's more honoring, that? Or you know that when she's out with her friends and you're not around, she's acting in a way that honors your family name out there, right? Right. Yes, yes. Same true church. If you told your pastors, "Pastor, I honor you," right? Right? That would bless their heart, and you should, right? But what's more honoring? That you say that to their face, or that they know when you're out there that you're acting in a way that honors the value of this place out there, right? Now, the same thing is true about family honoring. Honor has nothing to do with telling your father, "I honor you." And it has nothing to do with pretending what he did wasn't destructive and pretending what he did didn't hurt and acting like none of that even matters. That has nothing to do with honor. In Hebrew culture, honor your father and mother has everything to do with having the bravery to go, "You know what? Certain things in our family habits need to go on, and certain things in our family habits need to die with them. And therefore, we perpetuate the godliness and kill the ungodliness." And that is honoring our father and our mother. Right? See, I travel the world, right? And I get this a few times a year. "Shane, wow, you must come from a long line of educated preachers." No. I'm the first person in my entire family, all the way extended to second cousins, that ever went to university. My great-grandfather, actually all four of my great-grandparents were illiterate. None of them could read. My great-grandfather was illiterate. He made his living moonshining. If you don't know what that is, that's running illegal homemade whiskey across state lines. He made his living moonshining, and he was a member of the racist group, the Ku Klux Klan. He's from the South. My great-grandfather was an illiterate, moonshining racist. And you think, how do you get from that to what I'm seeing on this stage right now? Very simple. My parents stood on their own 2 feet and they drew a line and they said, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Oh yes. Our children will go to school. Our children will read books. Our children will learn the ways of Jesus. Our children will learn that the Spirit of God indwells all people and we are one shared humanity in the risen Christ. Our children will not be racist because that's just stupid. And in one generation of that line being drawn, you move from that to a guy traveling the world. My brother's got an international MBA, and he's in ministry as well. You got two brothers that just because of that moved the entire family tree. And it had nothing to do with us. It had to do with our parents drawing a line and saying, "Wait a minute, just because my father ate sour grapes doesn't mean I have to continue that nonsense." Here's the thing, right? This should be obvious, but in case it's not, if you don't, your children will have to. Why would you leave it to them? You can be the hero of your family tree tonight. If you don't do anything with this message other than this, if you're a married couple, go home tonight or tomorrow while it's fresh on your mind and go, "Is there anything we're rationalizing today that we'll regret tomorrow? Is there anything that happens in our family and we haven't even really thought about it, it's just always happened? But maybe it's death." And don't get tricked into the right or wrong. Like, is there anything wrong with that? Is anything right? Right or wrong is a serpent question. God is asking what is wise. Right? If your only filter for your decisions is this right or wrong, it'll destroy your life. Because there's a lot of things that aren't wrong that are destructive. Right? The better question is this wise? And you could change your family tree. Because here's the thing. The hope for your life is to honor your father and mother. What do I mean by that? Death to darkness, life to God's ways moving forward. And here's the thing, right? 4 generations later, people all over the world think my great-grandfather was a godly guy. And how better to honor him than to live as if he was anyway? That's honor. Because here's the thing, this is what's so important. There's a way to preach this that sounds like this. Oh, hey, if you could just get healed in your heart, your behavior could be different. And there's something to that. Like there's a little bit, like, oh, you look at someone whose behavior is destructive, you say, hey, if that person could just get healed, then their behavior would be different. And the problem with that is what if you go through 50 prayer lines and you never get healed? You end up and that's the beauty of Ezekiel's thought. The beauty of Ezekiel teaches it the exact opposite. He says, no, you don't need your heart to be healed. Just by faith, start behaving different, and that's where that is. Right? Because here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. Some things you can't be healed from. You can't. Some abuses are so terrible. You want to be healed from that? No. Some betrayals are so profound. You want to be healed from that? No. No way. And that's the beauty of Ezekiel's thought, is he says, God is not interested in healing your wounded heart. God is interested in giving you a brand new one. Why would you walk around with a patched up heart when there's a heart transplant waiting? So why don't we all stand together and let's posture ourselves in a humble, repentant sort of turning around posture. And we could say, if you're brave enough, underneath your breath, why don't you pray this prayer? Holy Spirit, would you give me the grace to see things different and the irresistible urge to respond to what I see. Holy Spirit, would you reveal to me family habits that need to die today? I'd love to be the hero of my family tree. I'd love for my great-grandchildren to look back and go, it was that guy that drew the line. It was that lady that drew the line. You can be the hero of your family tree tonight. If you're here tonight and your heart was profoundly moved by the pain of the violation or the abuse or the destructiveness, I speak peace over you. I speak comfort. I speak bravery. I speak empowerment. I release that over your life. To the one in here that was abused by your father, I speak empowerment to make a better decision going forward. I speak the grace to forgive him, not in the sense that it wasn't wrong, but in the sense that the feeling that he owes you something can leave. Can leave. You could be set free from that. But for the one who grew up in a house where everybody was yelling and screaming, and you're finding that, I speak empowerment to make a better choice. I speak life and peace and wholeness and shalom. Lord, I pray that this place would be a dwelling place for your name, the compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love God. Let that presence settle over us. Set us free from any thought that we're being judged for the sins of our fathers. And set us free from any thought that it's our responsibility for where our adult children are. Empower us, Spirit of the living God. Empower us to stand on our own 2 feet in our generation and draw a line in the sand that says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The word I feel to release right now is empowered. There is a window of opportunity where if you choose to make the family change, you will find it supernaturally easy to do it. There will be a grace on it that you can act now. Would you look this way? Thank you so much for letting me be a part of your life tonight. You've been so kind and gracious. I haven't really been a part of a group of people that was that excited to see me in a long time. You guys were pretty awesome. You made that 4-hour drive well worth it. I love you. I love you, Pastor. I love the place. I love what you're standing for. I'm going to be a part of this family. I'm going to not be a guest. I'm going to give to your capital campaign. I'm going to be a part of what you're doing, because where your treasure is, there's your heart. And so we're going to do this thing together. Now, I'm a friend. I'm a low maintenance friend, but I'm a friend. Thank you so much for being so kind to me. I hope you were inspired tonight. I hope you laughed. I hope you laughed a bit. I hope you cried a little bit. I hope you were challenged. I hope the Spirit of God moved you in one area or another. I bless you to be people who don't just go to heaven when you die, but I bless you to be people who bring heaven to every place you see hell here, including parts of your family. I bless you to be the heroes of your family tree. I bless you to be those people that generations in the future look back and go, those are the people. I bless you to be those people. And I bless you to be people that never, ever, may it ever be said out of anybody's mouth in this room ever again, that my father ate sour grapes and it's my teeth that are set on edge. Be empowered in your generation to choose life. Grace and peace, everybody. God bless.